As the corporate sector evolves, Berkha Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Berkha Africa. Berkha Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Berkha's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Berkha supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.berkhafrica.com for more information.
That has been given to you.
So that is
now,
yours.
The question is, do you have ownership of that?
Own it.
Have you discovered who you
I have a head. I bought it from the market. No.
So
It was made by someone. I own it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, joining us here, wherever you're joining us in and around the world. This is Berkha Africa's African Youth Leadership Seminar. And for today, we are here in Accra, Ghana, the heart of Accra. For today, we are going to talk about communication mastery, influencing and inspiring as a youth leader. Communication mastery, influencing and inspiring as a youth leader. And today we'll be joined by two distinguished personalities, very youthful, I presume, but they will tell us. And so to talk about communication, and whether you're joining us on Berkha Africa's social platforms, be it LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, you are warmly welcome. Just as we go through today's discussion, if you have any questions, any comments, you can just post it out there, and then when a time is due, we would let your comment, we would answer your comments and also your questions as well. Today, we are going to talk about communication mastery, how to influence as a youth leader. Joining us from South Africa is Joyce Fury. Joyce Fury is actually a lawyer whose expertise bridges both corporate and academic spheres. Her leadership and management experience encompasses legal advisory, legal document drafting, human resources, people development, performance management, a whole lot. Also, she's as a mentor with the Richard George Foundation. She dedicates her time to nurturing young leaders across Africa, helping them to develop the confidence and skills required to meet leadership challenges and drive change. Joyce, welcome to today's dialogue.
Oh, thank you, Doc.
Next is also another formidable individual here in Accra, Ghana, doing wonderful things. He's in the person of David Adongo. David is an AFTA facilitator and president of the for Contemporary Pan-Africanism. He also serves as a strategic communication specialist at PAX Africa, director of legal affairs at the Federation of African Law Students, and a fellow with emerging public leaders. He is deeply passionate about writing advocacy and advancing Africans' integration agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Divine Adonko. Divine, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really glad to meet the entire team and our audience here.
Great. My name is Dr. Senyo Kluchedo. Welcome. Good. So today, I will start with a very basic one. Today we are going to talk about communication, mastering communication as a youth. How can your voice be heard as a young person, especially in an African setting? How can your voice be heard? First of all, I'm wondering, can voices be stifled? As a youth individual, as a youth, can it be stifled? Because I hear a lot of people say that youth need to be heard, their voices need to be heard, their voices, you don't give them a chance and all that. Does that mean that your voices are only heard at a particular age or at a particular stature? Can voices, youthful voices, be stifled? Divine.
That's a very interesting question. Of course, voices can be stifled, and it comes in various forms. It could come in regulatory perspective. It could come in censorship. It could come in access. For instance, censorship. When if you are in Ghana, you may have heard that in the era of Rawlings regime, there was this culture of silence where journalists couldn't speak or publish articles that are criticizing the government. Journalists couldn't use their own platform to speak ill of the government. So that was in a part censorship, that were stifled voices, critical voices, discerning voices as to the level or extent to which they can criticize government. So that's the censorship part. If we also look at regulatory part, just recently there's a group that is advocating on the need for the voting age to be reduced to 16 years because their perspective is that young people are increasingly becoming knowledgeable and discerning even at a younger age because of access to information. So it's not like our era, or I'm still a young person, but I'm talking about the Gen Zs now. I'm a millennial. That it was difficult for you to have access to certain critical information. These days, as young as 10 years, they have access to social media where ministers, governors are being discussed on this platform. So people are saying if they are exposed to this information, why can't they vote if they are aware of this? So that's in a form of this thing, regulatory perspective. Even in your corporate organizations, you have a level of access to granted for you in certain information, and some access to certain information are not granted to you. So that's also the regulatory aspect. Access to has to do with maybe you have the voice, but you don't have access to the decision-making table. There's an advocacy in Ghana that we want more young people to be included in governance. And I think it cuts across all African countries where we are having leaders above 70 years still running for office. We are having ministerial positions given to the elderly instead of bringing young people on board. So access is another thing. So there are various ways that they can stifle voices.
Great.
But the good news is social media is here. So we would see how that would work out.
Okay. I'm based on what you just said, social media is here. So let's see. So Joyce, in your world, in your work in academia, academic freedom, with regards to writing, publishing, in that perspective, from that perspective, could you say that sometimes voices can be stifled?
Yes, I would say definitely voices can be stifled. So in academia, it's all about your name. Who are you as an individual? Are you qualified to speak on the matter? What is your expertise? So in academia, there's a lot of gatekeeping. If you're not an expert in a field, you find that your voice is not heard. Who are you associated with as an individual? All of those things matter. And as a result, you find that a lot of youth, they are not able to express themselves in academia, or they are not being heard because they are not experts in their field, or they are not affiliated with people that are experts in the field. So that's a major challenge.
Great. So imagine African youth who wants to do great things, who want to change the contribute to that change that we're talking about, the African Renaissance and the change they're all talking about, the Pan-Africanist dream and all that. And we are saying that sometimes voices can be stifled. How then do you strategize in a way to know that, okay, this is a platform for me? Divine said, this is, I have access. And in your own personal journeys, were you confronted with cases or instances where you felt your voices, you cannot really speak, even though you want to speak, Joyce? In your own personal experiences, have you felt that at a point your voices were like, okay, no one needed to hear you?
Yes, definitely you experience all of that. So, like I said, in academia, it's more about personal development. So, if you don't develop yourself and position yourself strategically so that you can be heard, if you leverage on, I just want to be heard, nobody will hear you. It's about what do you do to make sure that you are heard. So, firstly, I would say that context matters. Before you try to be heard, are you in the right place where somebody will lend you a listening ear? Because if you just start speaking from nowhere, what is the point of the communication process? Who's going to hear you? Who's going to respond? Who's going to grant you the platform? So I always say there's a statement about communication that says that communication doesn't happen in a vacuum. And communication is a two-way process. So before you start communicating, think about it. You want to be heard. Is it the right platform? Is it the right audience? Is there someone that can actually further my communication where I am? So context really matters a lot before you start
Okay,
communicating.
context matters. Divine.
Yes.
What else?
I really love what Joy said about the building your competence and context. Those are the determinants of whether if you gain access, they would want to listen to you or not. Having said that, I think what you say, it's as good as where and when you say it. In communication, when we are developing our strategic plans or strategies, we have various steps. And one of those critical steps are platform analysis. So we have the paid media, we have the earned media, we have the shared media. The paid media are those that perhaps you have to pay to have access to. Certainly young people don't have the resources. The shared media are those platforms like youth groups are on Facebook, youth groups are on LinkedIn. We have professional platforms on LinkedIn, advocacy groups on LinkedIn. You can join those groups to make your voices heard. That's then the own media is your personal handles. How are you leveraging your personal handles to push the messages that you are talking about? So when you want to have something to say, want to build thought leadership in a particular sector or advocate on something, you first have to analyze all the platforms that are at your disposal. What do I have? Then you identify those that you have access to. Then you now craft the message that is ideal for that kind of platforms. So if you're a young person, you want to talk about how the affirmative action is being implemented in Ghana. We have less than 30% of women in leadership. You don't have access to the parliamentarians. You don't have access to the ministers. Okay, I want to use my social media platform. That's what I have access to. How do I go about it? Then I have to come with these hashtags that would reach to the ministers that I want to talk to. I have to know the ministries that I have to draw their attention. I have to know the people I have to draw their attention. You search and get their handles. So each time you make a post, you are tagging them and drawing their attention. You rally your young people, people that you think are also affected by this kind of limitation, also appealing to their emotions to see how they would join you in that fight. So it first has to do with building your capacity. So when the platform is granted, you would be able to advocate and analyzing the platforms where you need to use, and also coming up with the appropriate messages that you could use to champion whatever that you have.
Which is very interesting. Building capacity, analyzing your context, the platform, especially with regards to social media, the social media platforms. But I want to pick both of you. I want to pick your minds on this. This, what you just explained, looks very sophisticated. I mean,
Okay.
like, yeah, because to be able to do that, checking for handles, doing that, but I'm just thinking of the normal African man or woman in the streets who also needs his voice to be heard. Okay, because I'm saying this because during elections we get to see all these people vying for position, going even to the grassroots level. But somehow, after the position and all that, it begins access. It becomes very difficult for grassroots to get to, let's say, these government positions and everything. So as an African, so yes, social media is one of the ways, but are there other strategies? Are there other ways by which individuals, predominantly youth, can engage with their leaders at the very minimal level? Joyce, I mean, it's just a question I'm throwing in there because yes, social media, but it sounds too sophisticated for some of us with who are not technically IT inclined and all that. Are there other avenues? Are there other platforms that Africans or youth at their social level can engage leadership?
Well, I would say that is a difficult question to answer. But in my thought, I would say find organizations, for example, that you can affiliate yourself with that can facilitate that communication. Because sometimes, as an individual, you might want, yes, to communicate this information to your leaders, but as you're saying, how, as an ordinary African youth person, you might not be given the platform. So I would say find some sort of affiliation. We have a whole lot of organizations, for example, Berkha Africa, that is there to ensure that the voice of the youth is being heard. So if you affiliate yourself with such organizations, I think it will help to pass your message across, because sometimes you just can't get across to the leaders.
Okay,
That's
great,
what I think.
great. And this is a follow up to Divine. Divine was talking about social media platforms and all that. And yes, it's the way Divine explained it. It was as a good tool and everything. But can these social of late, over the past years, a lot of social media apps have come into existence, and then it looks like some governments or some institutions are trying to regulate that platform. And so, Divine, how is social media shaping the communication landscape for today's youth leaders?
All right. So before I answer that, let me just add something to what Joyce said about the other platforms that you could use to gain access. I started my communication from Tamale as one of the youth advocates. So what we did then, we didn't have a bigger platform. We couldn't do it on our own. We formed what we call the Northern Regional Youth Network. It's still on. Now they have social media platforms. If you can check it out. So what we did is to bring all the youth, smaller groups together and form a bigger platform called the Northern Regional Youth Network. And we started advocating for issues that are affecting young people. The notable one was when COVID-19 started, we had to advocate for them to prioritize persons with disabilities, to vaccinate them first before any other person, so they don't have to come and queue and all that. And that was a success. So what, and the tool we used there was a petition. So while we're talking about it, meeting stakeholders, we also wrote a petition, go and submitted it to the regional minister, then Honorable Salif Said, then outlining what we think they should do with regards to persons with disabilities. And those inputs were taken. So there are various ways. If you can't do it alone, find people who have similar challenges and partner with them. And even market women have associations. So that is it for other platforms, exploring other platforms. Now, coming to the social media, I guess your question is on the regulatory aspect and how we could use it. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. So the regulatory aspect, I'll take that first. It's a bit dicey in the sense that we have regulation that is trying to stifle people's voices, young people's voices, and we have regulation that is trying to sanitize the platform. So TikTok, for instance, I go there, then there are young people, minors. What they do is twerking. They are really not using the platform for anything productive, anything educative. So if we have regulation that is trying to see how they could minimize their exposure to content that is influencing them to adapt certain behaviors, that's a good one, which I advocate that countries should start thinking of how to regulate these platforms for us to have morally and productive, raise morally and productive children. That's the regulatory aspect. Now, talking about how we could use it, and I'll build it from what I just explained about some of the behaviors that are going on there. You have to first know what you want to communicate there before you even create the platform. Now, the issue we are dealing with is that most young people want to go viral. They want popularity. They want to be known. That's the goal, but that shouldn't be a goal to make you go to social media. The goal should be that, okay, in the next 5 years, I want to be a politician. So how do I start building thought leadership that would make me attractive to the political scene? In the next 5 years, I want to be a thought leader in AI. How do I start posting about AI? In the next 5 years, I want to be a big player in the fashion industry. How do I start posting? So when you have that on the ground, then you are creating a platform and you begin searching for maybe influencers that are into fashion, people that are into politics, people that are into tech, and start following them. Then you look at how they are crafting their messages. I have a lot of people I look up to even at this stage of my career, where I go to see how they even start their messaging. You look at how they do it and you start to imitate, not pick word for word, but look at how they craft their voices, how they engage their following. Then you start engaging them in that direction. So that's the strategy behind it. Now you have to also know that the platforms, different content works for different platforms. TikTok, for instance, if you go there with only text, you won't get viewership. So you have to if you have a message on LinkedIn that is text heavy, if you are taking it to TikTok, you have to probably translate it to a reel, a video, a short video, and post that. If you are translating it to Instagram, you have to translate. If you are posting it on Instagram, you have to translate it to a short video. If you are taking it to Facebook, also you can use text. So you have to also know the algorithm that works for different platforms and know how to adapt your messages to suit those platforms.
Great for your input. Thanks for your input, Divine. Joyce, you made in the beginning, you made mention of the fact that communication is two-way. So there is the speaking part and then the other part, which is the listening. So what are there any, how effective can it, let's say an individual is passionate about a particular vision or something he wants to see change in his immediate environment. So what are some of the effective approaches for sharing a vision that excites and motivates people so that such a person or that individual with his or her vision can attract the necessary attention they would require? In other words, how can I get people to listen to me?
Okay, very important. I will just highlight the main points in this. It touches on a lot of what Divine spoke about. That firstly, know your social media platforms. What do I want to communicate first? What is the end goal of communication? What do I want? Who do I want to speak to? So, firstly, you have to choose the right platform. For example, let's say you want to reach certain organizations. You have to look at which is the best platform for me. Is it TikTok? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? And then when you then identify the correct platform, make sure that your communication is going to speak to that audience. So, for example, don't go on about a video when you know that your communication needs you to write. Or if you now do decide to write, decide on the length. What are the words that you want to use? One thing about communication is if you say a lot, you lose people. They stop following you. So your message needs to be precise, straight to the point, targeted at that particular audience. So use the appropriate words, use appropriate language, use the appropriate platform to ensure that you get your message across to the people that you want to get to. So I will take it back to context. Context in communication, that is always your number one point. Context, study your audience. Who is my target audience? And what does my target audience listen to? What is it that catches their attention? Because you won't be able to pass communication across if it's too general. It has to be tailor-made for a specific audience. So all out as an academic, I would all say it all goes back to you educating yourself about the
Great.
different platforms, about the communication process, about the audience that you want to speak to, the ways of presenting your communication, and look at the possible barriers to that communication that you intend to put there. Think about how people are going to receive your communication. Are there others that are going to retaliate? Are people going to agree with you? Are you ready for negative feedback? How are you going to deal with things like that? These are all the things that you need to think about before you even start with the communication process itself.
Great.
So I would
Sure,
edge the way.
that's a great point that you just made, which will be a follow up to the question I would ask Divine. But then before I do that, I just want to recognize some people on the social media platforms. Good morning, Victoria. You're joining Victoria Nyama. Good morning. We have Abdullah Yakubu all the way from Tamale. You're welcome. We also have Perpetual, etc. And keep your comments coming in, keep your questions coming in, and then I would relay it to our guest. So you're talking about you have to think about the feedback before you even communicate in which form you should do that, etc. I'm interested the feedback. So how do we respond to criticisms? Because yes, you can prefer an idea, a solution, and a suggestion, but it doesn't guarantee 100% acceptation. Okay, so then on this electronic media, how do we guard ourselves against, let's say, cyberbullying? How do we protect our integrity in a way that even though we have preferred a solution or a suggestion, constructive criticism which opposes our ideals or our ideas, how do we as youth, how do we do that so we will not be seen as being rebellious or disrespectful in especially in the media space? Divine.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sayo, and your viewers. Let me just yeah. So I read this book by Fisher and Ori. It's the title is Getting to Yes, and in the book, one of the things they talk about is separating the criticism from the personality. So that is if you say that this work needs improvement. Let's say my boss asked me to work on a document. I worked on a document, and the some of the critique is very disheartening. What you ought to do is to reorient yourself to separate what your boss said from you. So if your boss says this needs improvement, take it as the work needs improvement. You may and don't fall into the circle of thinking that you need improvement. Of course, it is your intellectual work, but it is the output that your boss is talking about, not you. So if you are able to psych yourself, reorient yourself, that every feedback they are giving you, it's about what you put out there, the output, not you, then you would be able to not be personal about whatever criticism that they are taking. So if you post content on social media and people come to attack that content, it is your perspective or what you put out there that people are attacking, not you, the personality. So you have to be ready to what? To do that separation. That's one part of it. Another part of it is knowing how, if it comes to social media, knowing how to operate on these platforms. For me, all my social media handles, even if it tag me on a post, unless I allow it, it won't go through. So you have to be activate. I go on people walls, and especially in Ghana, there's this malam money doubling scams on their wall, their timelines, and it's very bad. You have to know how to set your this thing, your platform, so it will filter all those ones out. Now, when it comes to comment in public relations, we have different ways of tackling situations like that. One of the common one is silence. When you leave it, especially if it's not an organization but an individual, if you leave it, it would what? Go past. Like people will forget about it. Another part, if you want to respond, have in mind that you are responding to everyone that is reading the content, the messages on your platform. You are not responding to that person. So if that person provokes you and you think you're attacking that person, another person, especially maybe your supervisor, your admirer, someone who is willing to give you a job, would come and read the comment and be like, is this how you are? So if you are responding to someone, have in mind that both of you are exchanging, but the public are watching. So why not I reply with maturity? So when people come to see, they'll say, "Oh, this guy is emotionally matured." That's the perspective you should have if you are dealing with people like that. So yeah,
Joyce, is that easy? Joyce, is it that easy? What the picture Dave and Divine has painted? It's very, very easier said than done, because these are words,
no,
they
no,
they
no,
hurt. You
no.
read them and you go like, I mean, some people, you read them and you go like a whole 1 week, you're still thinking about that. I
It,
mean,
it,
are these things techniques that Divine has shared? I agree with largely with some of them, but Joyce, are these easy steps to take?
Well, they are not easy steps to take. They really do require a lot of personal development. Like you said, you read a comment and you're like, what are you thinking? But my advice is react in private. Scream and do whatever and say, vent to your friends. But when you go back to social media, I've one of my friends who always used to say that social media is unforgiving. It's unforgiving because of one thing: digital footprint. You put it in there, it's stuck. You might delete it, but another person has shared it, and another person will share it and share it and share it. And then, like Divine says, it will go to your admirers, to your supervisors, to your superiors. So it's more a matter of exercising restraint. look at the long-term consequences than the short-term satisfaction of responding and saying, I gave this person a piece of my mind. They know not to deal with me, but what are the long-term consequences that are associating with responding like that? So those are the things now that you must look at, because Divine once spoke, it made an example of, you want to be a politician. 20 years down the line, a statement that you said 20 years ago, they will pull it out. Is this how you are going to deal with national issues? And what do you say? So it all goes back to digital footprint. Think ahead, don't think in the moment. It's one of those things about communication. You need to learn to exercise restraint. It's part of
Okay. So,
emotional intelligence.
So should we go digital incognito? Okay, no more digital. I will just be in my space, so no one keeps record of all that. Is that what you want us to do now?
No, I'm saying choose what you put on social media, because the moment you put it out there, it's very difficult to take it away. You might take it down, another person has already forwarded it.
Well said.
Most of these people, they don't know you in person. You don't have personal relationship with them. So obviously they are speaking out of face value. What you put out there, not you. They don't even know you in person. So why would they allow someone like that to drag you down, that people that know you in person would now start questioning you?
So now let's move from the digital space to interpersonal interactions with people, because now in the digital space we are doing this program via internet, via the net. So we can but it's not I think it's not the same if you find yourself in the same room with, let's say, in a conference, okay, in a setting. How then would you suggest to youth who have brilliant ideas? It could be a town hall meeting. Okay, you have ideas or solutions that they would want to project, or let's say speak to the authorities concerned. How then should the youth be able to craft their message? Yes, context matters. Yes, the message has been thoroughly thought through and all that. But what is the role of presentation when it comes to face-to-face conversation? Divine.
Yeah.
What is the role of conversation, and how well should the youth be prepared for that? Because sometimes people just get personality stuck. They just look at the person, and then the aura with which some personalities come with, and then all their ideas, brilliant ideas, which hitherto have rehearsed, they just get frozen. And so how well can the youth prepare for that? Perhaps you can use your example, Divine, as an advocate in your days in Tamale to just expound on this question.
All right, thank you so much. But I can't answer this without reminding our audience of what Joyce said when we started this conversation. She talked about capacity building. Capacity building. That's the only thing that can save you. It builds your confidence. So like Doc Sayo said, if you meet someone with that aura, that level of leadership, how do you speak to that person? All of us get intimidated, but if you've learned a lot about your topic, you are able to speak. So let's have that as the fundamental. Now, from my days in Tamale, what I've learned early, and perhaps I was privileged to come from the communication background. In journalism, we have something we call the 5 W's and H. That is basically what journalists use to present their information. So the first one is what are you talking about? Where in particular is this thing about? How do you want to? How is this thing done? So it's very concise if you put it that way. Then you're able to present it to whoever you are talking to in a format that doesn't come out in a verbose form or too explanatory. So that's one part. If you can't use and I could share it with you after this, so maybe they will just get to know it. So if you can't use a strategy like that, maybe you're not privileged, you're not exposed to something like that. First, if you are talking to another person, again, think of what. So I want to talk about how this particular program is going. First, I have to what? Commend Doc and his team for putting this together. I mean, they just introduced me to StreamYard. This is very incredible. They are using technology to bridge skills gap. But I think if they had what? Leverage on all our social media platforms, we would reach more audience. Now I've brought in a criticism, then I would what? Go again to talk about the good part. But I think you've what? Really done well in still bringing all these people together. So first, I start with what? A good part, the fact that they are able to use technology to bridge skills gap. Then I bring in the fact that what? I now bring in my critique. If you had talked to all of us and shared it with all of us, then we shared on our platform, we reach more people. Then I conclude with what? Another compliment. But you've really done well. Look at the number of people that are on this stream. So at the end of the day, you started a conversation with a compliment that would make the person feel better. Then you critique the person would be what? Maybe tension is getting high. Then you conclude it with another compliment. Then you calm the person down. Now they would want to take your feedback. But if you just go straight that, okay, if you had shared this with us, then we share to more people, we'll get more people, he's going to get defensive. And at the end of the day, you won't get your results. So you have to always use this three-step approach: compliment, critique, compliment, to get what you want. Another rule is, and that I read that from the 48 Laws of Power, never outshine the master. And I think if Robert Greene, who wrote the book, if he was an African, he would know that in Africa, it's not only the masters. In Africa, the rule should be never outshine the elderly. In Africa, anyone that is older than you have to respect them. Even if you are knowledgeable than them, you have to put it in a way that they won't feel what? Undermined. So I'm going to present something to my boss in a board meeting or an elderly person. But sir, how about if we do it this way? Or don't you think we could do it this way? You're still putting them in a position of power to make the final call. But if you come and say, I think we should do it this way, who are you to think in that boardroom? Yes. So you have to always have this sort of strategies in putting your point across as a young leader. And I have done this throughout my work at Savannah Signatures in Tamale, Northern Regional Youth Network. We get to the minister's office and already you are very intimidated. But you'll be like, okay, sir, we were at the COVID-19 centers to get our vaccine, and we realized that the persons with disabilities were relegated to the back. Sir, don't you think if we prioritize them, even the donor communities, our international communities that are visiting these things would see that we are doing very well with prioritizing persons with disabilities? Then you make him make the final call and take credit for it. But if we had walked in there, we'd be like, sir, we got to the COVID-19 vaccination centers and persons with disabilities were relegated. We don't think that is the best. We have to prioritize them. Who are you to dictate? So you have to always come from a perspective of what? Serving and still making what? Your bosses, anyone who is above you shine.
Great input. Before I'll come to Joyce. Joyce, there is a question for you, but we will go for a short break. And I'll preempt the question so you have ample time to think through. And that would be I'll just quote Divine. You don't have to outshine your master. Do you agree? In what circumstances should you outshine? And if so, how should you do it? So before we come back to that question, Berkha Africa, it's organizing an African youth leadership development program. We're going to start in Nigeria, and it's a time, or it's a period where we get to interact with senior high schoolers in Nigeria, providing them with mentorship and coaching for 5 months, as well as, so it's going to be, we start in Nigeria, we begin there, and then for the next 5 months, we will be engaging them with seasoned coaches and entrepreneurs, and to be able to walk them through, help them take critical decisions before they come out of high school. We are in partnership with the Center for African Conflict Resolution, Development. And this, we encourage all high schoolers who are in Nigeria to watch out for our leadership boot camp mentorship program. This, we believe, would engage the youth at their age to be able to think about some of these critical questions we are talking about: communication, entrepreneurship, as well as coaching, decisions that you want to take in life. So, Berkha Africa, we reach the youth as well. So this is actually a pilot program, and from there we'll be hosting similar ones in Ghana, in Liberia, in Gambia, in Sierra Leone, and in 2 other Francophone African countries. This is what Berkha Africa it's all about: supporting leadership, governance, and youth development. If you're joining us on social media, your questions are always welcome. So I'll be reading some of the questions, but after that, I'll leave the platform to Joyce to give us her input on the question: should we always sing to the tune of the masters? Should we be, for lack of a better word, bootlickers, just to please whoever we want to address? Joyce, over to you.
Thank you, Doc. I certainly agree with Divine. Unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. For example, that if you need to rise wherever you are, you need, at least at a certain point, to recognize the expertise of certain people, and you have to let them lead the way until they put you in a position of power. Because you find that mostly, be it in academia, be it in the workspace, people don't rise because they want to impose. Yes, you are very knowledgeable, but as Divine already says, who are you? If you don't own the company, if you don't have the resources, you need at least to recognize somebody who does. So I don't want to say it in many words, but yes, echo those sentiments that it's important that you recognize those that are in power, because through them you will rise.
Great. So there's a question from Bismarck. Bismarck says, should you always go by the boss's statement if you have something better to contribute? How do you contribute without sounding proud? Divine. These are Bismarck's questions. Bismarck says, should you always go by a boss's statement if you have something better to contribute? And also, how do you contribute without sounding proud?
Bismarck, that's an interesting question, but I must admit I'm finding it hard to really grasp what he's trying to say. And the word proud there, because I don't know.
Maybe he's trying to say disrespectful.
Oh,
because
okay.
Some comments, like example, what you just said, you might prefer a suggestion, a superior opinion,
okay.
And then it might be shut down and say, "Who do you think you are?" Kind of. That, I think that's what he meant.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Bismarck. I think I've briefly explained this, and what I said is that if you have a contribution that you think this perspective you are about to share would undermine your boss or make your boss appear less intelligent, what you ought to do is to communicate it as a suggestion, or communicate it as what? A perspective they should consider. That's why I shared the phrases you should be using. Oh, don't you think if we do it A, B, C, D, it'll be better? I like your position on this, but have you also considered this? So you are making your bosses think and take your position. But if you put it across as, okay, this is what I'm bringing on board, no. And Dr. Senyo talked about bootlicking. It is not bootlicking, let me say that. Because in every organization, there is what? Hierarchy of what? Reporting or communication. So even if you have the idea, the fact that you are working under your boss, he supersedes, or he's the umbrella of what? All of you, those working under him. So every idea has to be filtered through your boss. So you have to now know how to present it to your boss that would make him what? Consider it. And we are human. Some of us are emotionally intelligent to the extent that we can manage our egos. It's not everyone that can manage their ego. And so people want to be what? Feel important or this thing, valued. So if you have something to add, without wanting to feel to come across as being proud, put it as a suggestion. I think, boss, if we do it ABC, it will be better. Oh, boss, don't you think if we do it this, it will be better? Or you bring in this 3-step approach I talked about. Oh, boss, I think this strategy you are proposing, it's really great. I like ABC about this strategy. I also think if we do it CD, what, it may be better. But I really like it. If you think what I'm saying, it won't be the best, we could still go by what you are saying. So you are complimenting the person, putting a different perspective, and still ending by complimenting the person. It's the art of communication, the perspective, how you say it, that matters.
Great. So the hence basically you're saying there should be a nuance to your conversation, like how you construct your and present your ideas. I think
Exactly.
Happy Benedin Anochini Dabi also agrees with you. She say, "Oh no, no bootlicking, but don't outshine your boss as well." Good. Okay, good one. Yakubu, we take the question. The last question from Yakubu. He says, Abdullah. He says, as a leader, what will be the best communication that you can use to make your followers stay committed and listen to you often? Okay. As a leader, what would be the best communication, I think, approach that would make that you can use to make your followers stay committed and listen to you often? Okay. So, Joyce, are there approaches or tools that or ways by which leaders can use to get their followers stay committed and listen to them more often?
Yeah, I would say that as a leader, don't use an authoritarian style where you are always correct. Your word must always go. In the beginning, I said that communication is a two-way street. So you have to acknowledge your followers. So, for example, compliment, reward as a leader. If someone brings good ideas, acknowledge those good ideas so that at least they feel valued. And if they feel valued, they will listen to you and they will also contribute to what you are saying. So, very important to recognize other people and then not be the only voice in the
Divine, would you also
communication.
want to take a shot at this question?
Yes. So there's something in communication, a principle in communication that we call mirror and match. So the mirror and match principle basically talks about reflecting or mirroring the behaviors of your followers. So if you are, and most politicians and world leaders are doing that very well these days. So if you are on a platform, a conference, social media platform, you have to look at how your audience communicate, the words they use, the set of jargons they use, and mirror that behavior. So if you are talking to Gen Zs, then you are using very technical terminologies. They won't appreciate it, especially some of us that are into the policy space. You have to find a way to relate, to break down that technical terminologies to a format that would mirror their energy, so they would understand. I think 2 weeks ago, I was talking to one of my team members under the Federation of African Law Students, and he looked at me. He's a Gen Z. He looked at me and asked me, "How old am I?" Now, we the millennials, this is something we can't do. You don't respect people. You just come across, "How old are you?" your boss. I'm like, okay. I hesitated, and I'm like, okay, I'm 32 years. That, oh, you're a grandfather. For a minute, I was angry, and I was like, how am I a grandfather, 32? Then I calm down. These are the Gen Zs. They come off like that. And I'm like, oh, but how old are you? He's like, he's 20 years. And I'm like, but I couldn't have given birth to you at 12 years. So I'm not a grandfather. I'm your big brother. So, yes, then we turn it to a joke. But if I didn't understand that, okay, this is a Gen Z, this is how they talk, I would have taken offense. Why would they even ask my age in a context that it was irrelevant? Second, you are calling me a grandfather. Why? So you have to understand the audience, the energy they exude, the sort of words they use, and mirror that part of it. So let's say if you are talking to your peers, you can use relatable scenarios because you grew up together and you've probably watched the same movies, you have the same understanding of things. But if you are watching to, let's say, the younger generations, you have to use what? Visual stories that you've probably also watch on TikTok, young musicians that they follow. You have to use scenarios in that direction. If you are talking to the elderly, adults, policymakers, then you have to come with evidence when you are talking to them. So just understand your audience and mirror their energy.
And then Bismarck follows up with another question, and perhaps that would be the last one for today. Will you continue? It says, I read, will you continue to suggest to your boss if he uses your contribution to elevate himself without recognizing you? It appears Bismarck has a personal experience here.
That is what I was about to say. I was about to say, Bismarck, I'm beginning to feel this is personal. So, so Bismarck, the thing is, of course, your work has to contribute to your boss' elevation. That's how it is. You are working through him. So when he succeeds, you succeed. So you are the officer, he's the manager. He uses your work to get to what? Maybe director position. If you are good enough, remember, it's not only your boss that is seeing your work in the organization. They may move you to what? A managerial position. Aside that, there are certain contributions that your boss can't take ownership of. These are things that you may be the only person to explain it because you came up with it. So there would be opportunities that your boss can't say, don't have any choice, but to put you to explain it yourself and you take the credit for it. But yeah, patience is virtue. If it keep on going, explore other opportunities, other platforms that you can shine.
Bismarck, when it keeps on going, explore other opportunities. Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you for the questions on social media, all the various Berkha Africa social media platforms. And unfortunately, we are barely hitting the hour. And parting words, Joyce.
Okay, parting words for me is please develop yourself, educate yourself, know your audience, and most importantly, like we said, social media is unforgiving. Digital footprint is important. So be aware of what you put out there and also think of long-term consequences. Thank you.
Divine, parting words.
Thank you very much. So, and to our audience, since this is a communication mastery, I happened to train some Liberians fellows a week ago, and I came up with this 9-step strategy. I don't know if your audience, if they want, they can take a pen. Let me just point them through. It sums up most of the things I've talked about. So they'll have a tool to live here with. First is in communication, you have to do your research to find the audience, the platforms, what you want to put across. Second is you have to set your objectives. What do you want to achieve, like Joyce mentioned? And it has to be specific. Your objectives have to be use the SMART principle. Third is audience analysis. What interests your audience? What are the age gaps of your audience? That is where the mirror principle comes in. So you'll be able to mirror them and give them what they want. Fourth is what? You have to select channels. Which channels do you want to reach? If one corporate professionals and you're on TikTok, you may be missing the point. LinkedIn should be your primary platform. Third is key messages. You have to have key messages, what you want to achieve. If you want to be thought leader in tech, the key messages you center on tech, everything supports those key messages. Now, strategy and tactics. What are you going to use to communicate? Is it videos? Is it text? Is it photos? That's the sixth one. The seventh one is content and implementation. Now come up with a content strategy. Are you going to be what? Looking for conferences to implement your ideas? Are you going to use social media? How often are you going to post, and to the time frame and all that? The F1 is monitoring and evaluation. You have to monitor. That's where the critique that Dr. Sayer talked about comes in. Even bad feedback, poor feedback, it's something that tells you either to build your emotional intelligence or take it and improve on your style. And that comes to the last one, improvement. Improve on your style. It goes that way, circle. So if you use these steps, at every point in time, you'll be on top of your game. Thank you so much.
Thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us on our African Leadership Seminar. Today, we spoke about communication, mastering communication as a youth. Thank you. This is Berkha Africa. We invite all our viewers and listeners to subscribe to our various social media handles, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and all the others that we have. And we have more in store for you, more programs, dialogue, more interesting radio, including the radio shows as well that we have. Berkha Africa, we really want to push, we seek to push the African narrative in a way when with regards to leadership, governance, strategic transformation of businesses, entrepreneurship, youth development. Thank you so much for listening. It has been a pleasure with you here. My name is Dr. Senyo Kluchedo, and our distinguished speakers have been Joyce Firi and then Divine Adongo. Until we meet in 2 weeks with another program, it's bye for now. Bye.
Hi, I am Austin Game, and I will be listening to Growth and Grind Africa, the transformative talk show, every Thursday on Unique FM at 5 to 6 p.m. Let's learn, grow, transform Africa. Growth and Grind Africa. Live it, learn it, lead it. You are welcome.
That has been given to you.
So that is
now,
yours.
the question is, do you have ownership of that?
Only.
Have you discovered who you
I have a head. I bought it from the market. No. It was made by someone. I own it.